shocking story out of Minnesota, where a homeowner is now charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder. After shooting 2 teenagers he says were breaking into his house on Thanksgiving Day. This after the man admitted to firing more shots than necessary after one of the alleged burglars laughed at him. Trace Gallagher live in L.A. with more. Trace?
The police report on this, Megan, very hard to read. 64-year-old Byron Smith telling police that his house had been burglarized 8 times before. So on Thanksgiving Day, he was down in his basement. He heard a window break and footsteps come down. As soon as 17-year-old Nick Kifer came into view, he opened fire. The teen tumbled down the steps. He then shot him again in the face, telling police, quote, "I want him dead." When his 18-year-old cousin Haile Kifer came down the stairs minutes later, he shot her. And when she fell down the stairs, he walked up to shoot her again, but the gun jammed. He says that she laughed and then told police, and I'm quoting here, "If you're trying to shoot somebody and they laugh at you, you go again." He then grabbed a different gun. Listen now to the sheriff.
Mr. Smith told us he then placed his .22 caliber pistol under the victim's chin and fired a final shot. The law doesn't permit you to execute somebody once the threat is gone, and there is no possible way the crime can continue.
But Minnesota does have the Castle Doctrine, which allows homeowners to use deadly force to protect their homes. Some say he was doing just that. Listen.
Break into somebody's house, something's going to happen, man. There's no good way to do it. I mean, is there a law on how to kill somebody?
To walk over and pop another round in that kid, that, in my mind, exceeds his use of justifiable force, even in the home.
Byron Smith never notified the authorities until the next day because he says he panicked. He finally called a neighbor asking for a lawyer, telling him what happened. The neighbor called police. He is now being charged with second-degree murder, 2 counts, being held on $2 million bond. Megan.
Wow, Trace, thank you. So, second-degree murder? Is it the right call? Joining me now, Joey Jackson, former prosecutor and defense attorney, and Brian Claypool, who is a defense attorney. You tell me. I mean, they were down. He shot them as they were coming down the stairs, one after the other. They were down, and then he finished them off. How is that self-defense at that point, Brian?
Well, Megan, here's the problem for prosecuting Byron Smith in Minnesota. The law, as it states right now, says that if you're a homeowner in Minnesota and somebody breaks into your property without consent and they are going to commit a felony, you can kill that person. This law does not distinguish between whether there was a reasonable, immediate threat to the person who owns the property. There's no language in the statute that says that. So I would argue for Byron Smith, obviously it's a tragedy, but I would argue for him, though, that the way this law is stated, he has an absolute immunity to being prosecuted for second-degree murder, and I would request an immunity hearing before this judge to have all the charges dropped.
So if that's true, Joey, then someone can break into your house. As soon as they step foot in the house, they're dead. They can step foot in the house, and no matter what happens, you just shoot to kill, continue shooting, shoot until you're sure they're dead. That's it.
Absolutely not. Listen, Megan, one thing is clear, and that is that any statute, whether it's written or not, has to be interpreted with what? Common sense. The fact is this. Self-defense is about one thing, self-preservation. Once you have preserved your life and others around you, that's it. Self-defense is not about making public pronouncements of vengeance or justice, or it certainly is not about execution. Self-defense is defending against the threat. And even though the Minnesota statute allows you to defend your home, it does not allow you, once the threat is otherwise resolved, to shoot someone in the face because you feel like it, and then when someone else is there to shoot them, they represent no other danger, but they laugh, so you shoot them multiple times in the chest, and guess what? According to him, you get a clean shot to the cranium through the neck, okay, so that you make sure they're dead. This is, without question, second-degree murder. It'll be prosecuted as such, and I do believe that the prosecution will secure a conviction.
But, Brian, is it easy to say that the threat was over, you know, sitting here in the studios? Like, I mean, if you're in it and people are, he says it was 8 times his house had been broken into, that he'd lost thousands of dollars, one after the other, coming down the stairs. He's by himself. You know, is it possible that even though he shot him and they were down, he did not believe the threat was over?
Megan, I don't think that's possible, but I disagree with Joey. He's going to have to amp up his charm factor with the judge and jury on this one.
His charm
because
factor?
He's got to amp that up, baby.
Did you see your fake client?
He's a charmer, but he's going to have to really escalate.
He's a charmer.
It's about the facts
Joey,
and nothing but the facts.
Not the facts, man.
When
Here's
you shoot
the problem.
someone
The
in the face,
legislature's got to change the law. Joey, the legislator's got to change the law here. Sometimes tragedies happen in our country to prompt change. The way that statute reads, it does not speak to immediate threat of death to the person who owns the property. It simply says you can kill somebody if they're entering your property with the intent to commit a crime. Okay. Now, if that's the case, it doesn't say you can shoot once, twice, 3 times, or 4 times. That guy was right who they
Let me
interviewed.
just jump in. This is the charm factor. Okay, this is the charm factor. He said about the girl, the 17-year-old girl, she laughed, but it wasn't a very long laugh because she was already hurting. And that's when he shot her in the chest several times, dragged her next to Brady, and while she was still gasping for air, fired a shot under her chin up into the cranium and described it as a good, clean finishing shot. Oh, he's a charmer, all right, Joey.
Ooh, well, listen, here's the point. The point is, you want to talk about statutes? Let's talk about the Constitution. Do we change the Constitution because something's not said? Does the statute really need to say that you can't shoot somebody 8, 9, 10 times and it will not be deemed self-defense?
But if it says deadly force, if you're allowed to use deadly force, period.
Megan,
that's right.
That's true. I will concede that. But once the threat has otherwise been terminated and they represent no other threat and they're tumbling down the stairs looking at you in utter, I mean, they can't defend themselves. Do you shoot them in the face? Is that appropriate? And when someone else comes down the stairs and you shoot them and they're otherwise, again, the threat's terminated, you shoot them again? That is not what you call lawful. It's called unlawful. It's called subject to prosecution.
This
and
is
it's
not the
called
last we've
guilty.
heard of this case. Guys, good debate. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Megan. Take care, Brian.